wherever you'd like. And you can make more space if you want.
Did you want this?
No,
Are you sure?
Yeah.
So
I don't know what I'm doing.
Tom, do you want to do prayers tonight?
Sure.
So this is where we would do the hand gestures. So you can cross all your fingers, thumb grab the pinkies. The ring fingers meet each other like a mountain. The pointer fingers grab the index. It's just fun.
Yeah, you got it.
Sashi Puki Jushin Metok Tramri Shi Nyen Degen Pati Sange Shindu Mete Uwa Gidrokuanam Shinla Chupasho Iram Guru Ratnam Mandalakam Nirayatayani Sanjay Shuram Sukhi Shuknam La Janshu Vardu Dakni Kyapsuchi Taki Jinye Gipe Sunamki Drola Penshir Sange Drupasho Sange Shuram Sukhi Shuknam La Janshu Vardu Dakni Kyapsuchi Daki Jinye Gipe Sunamki Drola Penshir Sange Drupasho Shuram Sukhi Shuknam La Janshu Bardu Dakni Kyapsuchi Daki Jinye Gipe Sunamki Drola Penshir Sange Drupasho.
And then let's just go into a little meditation, get ourselves ready. So you can sit cross-legged, just making your back, make sure your back is straight and that you're comfortable. That's good. And your chin also is parallel to the ground. It's not like up or down, it's parallel. And you can have your mouth slightly open. The eyes can also, just so that your jaw is relaxed, and your eyes can be open or closed. I like perfect timing.
She's gonna go in the back door to make sure.
Okay. Just before we get started. So Stephen, how are you comfortable?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're good. And if you want, you can even put like bolsters underneath your knees, and then that way they have support. But if you find it's comfortable, that's good. Just give Carol a second. And while Carol's coming, you can also just focus on your rooting, your sits bones. Make sure they're firmly kind of rooted in the ground. You can feel where your body is touching the ground to kind of get that foundation that's going to hold you up, and so that your spine is straight. We can bring it out after if you want. And then just focusing on your breath. it's going in and out. And just letting go of the day. You can just like let it all go so that you're fully here. And you can watch the breath as it moves in and out of your nostrils. To bring you here. And you can do what's called a perfect 10 and see if you can count your breath as it goes in and out. So the exhale, and at the end of the exhale, 1, inhale, exhale, at the end of the exhale, 2. And you may find if your mind jumps off and you think about dinner, what happened today, what's going to happen in the future, start again at 1. And we'll just do that for a few minutes. And then thinking briefly about what brought you here. What was the impetus, the desire? And then just think about that for a second. And sometimes it's a friend letting you know, a tragedy, needing a change, wanting to know more about something. And then about this thing that we're going to talk about today, which is bodhicitta. I don't know if this is a familiar term, but it's the wish to achieve enlightenment for the sake of every single living being. And just what does that mean to you at this moment? Is it possible? Could you be the kind of person that does that? And do you know people in the world that take steps towards doing that? And what does that make you feel like in your body? Is there a fluttering in the belly, in the heart, heat, tightening? And then just let all of that go. Come back in around. And then just gently, you can open your eyes or coming back in again, focusing. So this is one of my favorite subjects. And we've got the Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life, ACI 7. Who has taken it? Okay. So ACI 1, this particular course has 10 classes, and it gives like a brief snapshot of the next kind of courses, and this is class 7, and it coincides perfectly with ACI 7, which is the Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life. And also the next class that we do, we'll be talking about it some more. So the first little bit that we'll be talking about today is why. Why do you need the wish for enlightenment? Why do you need bodhicitta? And then next week we'll talk about how do you go about developing the wish, and how do you know when you've developed the wish. So to just get a kind of a context, because I was going to do a bit of a review on some of the things that we covered, because there's a piece especially that was covered off last week, that to understand why is it important to want to have the wish. So we'll talk a bit about that in a sec. So I'm not going to do as much in-depth review. So who here has heard of karma? Anybody in the room? It's a very standard item. I think I should have brought it coffee, called karma coffee. You see karma tips, karma this, right? So for karma is really important to understand the next piece of why you want to achieve enlightenment. So those that were here last week, can they tell me what they remembered of the 4 principles of karma? Actually, hold on just a sec. Before I do that, I want to kind of ask Stephen. Yelena, were you here last week? Okay, so Stephen, you're in the hot spot. No, I'm not asking you. No, but what's your understanding of karma?
Karma?
Yeah.
My understanding of karma would be that if you act a certain way, you can expect fate to treat you that way.
So, like, if
you do something bad and something bad happens, it's just karma.
Yeah, and if you do something good,
it's good karma.
Yeah, so you reap what you sow, kind of almost what Jesus was saying, right? So, good. Anybody else before? Last class we're not really changing that, but it was talking about the principles of karma. What are those? Can anybody give me the 4 principles?
It's definite.
It's definite. So give me more about that. What does that mean?
It always works.
Yes. Okay, you do something, you will always get the result. Very important to know that. What's the next one?
The opposite of that. If you didn't do it,
yes.
you don't reap the consequences.
Yeah. So you want to think about that in both ways, especially when you're talking about bodhicitta. And what's the other one?
It grows.
It grows. Big thing, and we'll talk a bit more about that one in a sec. Hi.
Hi.
How are you?
Carolina.
Yeah. Christine.
Nice to meet you.
You too. So we're just got started. So do you want to get yourself settled? Is that a good spot for you?
I don't know. Maybe this one.
Wherever you'd like.
Yeah, I'm okay.
Okay. So it grows. So what we talked about in other classes, that you have a mental movement of the mind is what? Karma. And how many mentals of a movement am I having in my finger snap? 64. So they say meditators have gotten down to being able to slow it down and watch that in a second, 64 mental movements have happened. Science has gotten up to, I want to say 48. Their machines have figured it out that much, that in a second we're having that many mental images. So they're saying karma is a mental movement of the mind. So what is your mind thinking about? What are you thinking about? What's your thoughts? What's your actions? And then they talk about it growing. okay, that you're like planting seeds or imprints in your mind. And if you've got a very strong emotion behind it, whether it be great love or great anger, what do you think happens with that seed? That we sometimes call it karmic seeds rather than just karma.
We will ripen.
Well, they all will ripen. They'll all ripen regardless, unless you purify it, and that's a different class. But
It has an exponential to ripen, like in a bigger. It will, if you have a feeling for something, that when you do an action, that feeling exponentially grows when something happens back to you.
yes, and that happens for all karma. And when the emotion is behind it, what do you think? It's even bigger. So you want to really think about that in both ways. You've got what Stephen was talking about, the good and the bad. Whatever is good and bad. So what else is the 4 principles? So we've got actions are certain, that if you don't do them, you don't experience a result, and they grow. What's the other one?
Time gap.
Time gap is a big one, but it's not the one.
Is that just what good produces good and bad produces?
Yeah, it's that it can't be lost. So, and that could be maybe where you could talk about the time gap there. They were saying that if there was no time gap, so the thing that gets us in trouble all the time is that we think that I'll use a negative connotation, if I'm gonna, I really need money, and I'm gonna go rob a bank to get it. I've got an in, I can get it, I can get this money. So I go in, I rob the bank, I come out with $100,000, it works. I go to the Bahamas, I'm sipping my Mai Tais, I'm like chilling out on the beach, and I don't get caught. What they're saying is that's the time gap. That there's no way that those two karmas are connected. The fact that I stole the money and the fact that I got the money are not connected. But it seems like it, because I'm seeing my hand go in, take out this wad of money, run off, and I'm seeing myself paying it, right? But they're not connected. The reason I'm getting the money is because of what? How can I get money? Just based on what we talked about. Good, not good, because I don't want to say that I want to define it in that way. The same type of action produces the same type of result. So if I'm getting money, what could I have possibly have done in the past?
I've given money.
Given money away. It's the only way that I can actually see myself getting money is if I've been giving money away. So then, with that principle, what does it mean over here with me in the Bahamas? What did I create over here that means my future result will be? Yeah, somebody is going to steal from me. Somebody's going to take from me. So those are the time gap. And that time gap, they say it could happen. My action that I do right now could, in the Buddhist lineage, they talk what happened in this lifetime, the next lifetime, or many lifetimes after. So how many lifetimes have we lived? They say like infinite lives, time of no beginning. So do you think in those other lifetimes maybe we weren't, we were probably really good? I mean, if everybody's here living in Vancouver, you were probably all really awesome. They say that the karma that you have right now to be here in Vancouver, we don't have a war. We have our needs mostly met. You've got leisure and fortune to be able to be here and hear these teachings. They say it's equivalent to somebody like a Dalai Lama or a king or a queen or somebody that's the amount of virtue, your goodness that you did in the past got you here. And then, if that turns off, is it okay?
That's fine.
Okay. And then the fact that you're not only living in Vancouver at this time, not at war, have all your needs met, have leisure and fortune, you're sitting here in a class that's talking about how can I become totally enlightened in one lifetime. That's not a common thing. That also is your past deeds that brought you here to hear this. Now, the other great thing is if you like the class or don't like the class, is that my fault? Am I off the hook? I am. It's if you like the class and it's, or you don't like the class, that's all based on something that you've done in the past. So all of these things are really important to get for this next piece as to why bodhicitta, being a bodhisattva, is such a great thing. So also before we jump into that next piece, what, for those that have been here, are the 3 principal paths? And wisdom. So we're now on to the second path, the bodhicitta. So renunciation is that you've realized, you're renunciating this life. You realize that the things aren't making you happy in the sense like infinite happy, really good happy all the time. That you get something and you like it for a while and then it changes. Or they don't stay. Or you get ill. Or you die. Or all of these things. And that's what they talk about, like that the suffering of the life all the time. You're going over and over and over. If you've lived also infinite lives, you've done this over and over. And so they're talking about the renunciation. So you're renouncing this life. It doesn't work. I'm giving it up. It doesn't mean that I'm going to say this again just to make it clear for those. It doesn't mean that you give up your house, you give up your job, you give up your money. It doesn't mean that you just go live in a cave in the mountain and I'm going to give it all up because it doesn't work. It means that you're not attached to it thinking that it's going to work. So that's where, and you can use all of those things for this life. Okay. So then I'll go with the first quote that was in the reading that you'll see. It's actually the only reading, and then the commentary is all there. So it's renunciation, though, can never bring the total bliss of matchless Buddhahood unless it is bound by the purest wish, and so the wise seek the high wish for enlightenment. And that's what we're going to talk about for this class. So somebody that has renunciation, they've given up this life. They're saying, I'm going to become enlightened, or I'm going to, now just say meditate. Do you think that they can get rid of all their mental afflictions? Marge is shaking her head no.
If they just meditate?
No, I'm just going on, if you just have renunciation alone, could you reach high states? And you're meditating and maybe you're doing yoga and you're doing your practice.
No, I think you need bodhicitta and wisdom too.
Okay. Anybody else? Any other takers?
Well, I'm not sure what high states mean, but I would imagine that just through renunciation and meditation, it is possible to find some level of happiness and contentment.
So I'll say nirvana, lower nirvana. And when they talk about nirvana, that means the removal of all your own mental afflictions. Do you think that you can do that with just, without bodhicitta, without the wish for enlightenment for everybody else?
Isn't that the lower schools, the hinayanas?
Mm-hmm.
Is that right?
Mm-hmm. And there's a reasoning of why that's important. Yes, Carol.
Well, just maybe because they would need to be able to recognize emptiness as well when they go forward.
Good question. So then, can somebody, now when they talk again about Stephen, about somebody seeing emptiness directly, is seeing your lack of self-existence. So, yeah, yay, we got a new person, so we can do this. So, oh, and look, it's a Buddha pen. So this is really important to understand also along with karma, because they're two sides of the same coin. So, what do you see, Stephen? And it's not a trick question.
A pen with a Buddha on it.
A pen with the Buddha on it, exactly. Does everybody in the room see a pen with the Buddha on it? So we can all agree. This could be a pen with the Buddha on it. So then imagine, does anybody, what's the dog you were taking care of? What was it?
Audrey.
Audrey. So it was a little dog. Does anybody else have an animal, a dog? Pet? No. So if a dog came in the room, and I'm holding this up here to Stephen and the dog sitting there looking at it, what would the dog see? Especially if I started to...
Toy, possibly.
Possibly a toy. And if I would be waving it around, they might take it in their mouth and chew on it, right? Who's right? And be like, what? Who's right, Stephen? The dog or you?
Well, I'd say they're both right.
They're both right. Why?
Because each of those, like, if you want, okay, so it's like a white cylinder shape with green and white, and then a purple top. And
Yeah.
what you ascribe to it is whatever you. So, whatever label you ascribe to it is whatever label you ascribe to it.
Okay, good. So, the dog, does the dog have a choice of what, and do you have a choice on what label you can ascribe to this? Can you see this as a chew toy? Really?
As someone who chews on pens sometimes, sure.
Yeah, but do you think like how the dog sees it? Like if the dog saw this as a chew toy, he would never pick it up with his little paws and start to write things down, right?
Right.
So, but can the dog see it as a pen, or do they have a choice on what label that they're putting on it?
I mean, I don't know what dogs think. I would think. I don't know. No, I don't think they could see it as a pen.
Mm-hmm. So do you think here that you are, do you think you have a choice on seeing this as a pen right now?
No, because I think I'd be wrong if I said that it wasn't a pen. So,
It's good because it's, and you're right. It's like we've got these labels that we're putting on here. Pen. We have the karma to see it as a pen. Our past deeds and actions has led us that we have the karma to see this as a pen and to be able to write, love notes. We'll be able to write wisdom words. You'll be able to write poetry, maybe, other things, right? But the dog does not have the karma to see pen. So where, you kind of said already, I'm going to say it again. Where is pen? If this, I'll say that before I jump in. Where is pen in here?
It's not in there.
It's not in there. Because if penness was in here, what would that mean?
Everybody would see it.
Everybody would see it as a pen. And so, if everybody saw it as a pen, the dog would have to pick it up and start writing poetry, Shakespeare with it, right? Woof language, right? They wouldn't be able to chew on it. So what our mistake is, the thing that gets us in trouble all the time, is we think penness is in here. We don't realize that it's, this is my past karma is forcing me to be able to see pen. So what's the big deal? Does it really matter in the scheme of things? But then when you have somebody that comes along that's not like the Buddha, but who knows how the Buddha is for you, but say you have somebody that's irritating. You have somebody that irritates you, that makes you angry, that pushes your buttons. And you you're seeing everybody else around is irritated by that person too. Where is irritating or person in here? Is there somebody in the world that would find that person not irritating? Mother, maybe, wife, husband, friend wouldn't find that person irritating. So where is that irritation coming from? From you. You're forced to see irritating person. So knowing that, that's how you can start to change your world. Because then you're not going around saying, this person is irritating, I am going to do something to get them away. I'm going to harm them, I'm going to push them away, I'm going to ignore them, I'm going to talk about them to everybody so everybody can just hear how irritating this person is. And what do you think that is doing? And what we do all the time. We think that the irritatingness is in the person, so then we start, creating more karma to see more irritating people in the world. So that's important to understand also when we're talking about karma and emptiness are two sides of the same coin. You can't have one, without the other. So it's like to know that it's not actually in the object, that it's like how Stephen said, it's like my projection. I'm projecting onto that. Shapes and colors. But it doesn't mean that, I won't go there yet, about there are two different tricky things that you can do when you start hearing about emptiness, because it's very slippery, like a slippery pig. You have it for a second and then it's gone, and then it's like, So you can go to these two extremes. The two extremes of the cliffs are things exist out there, always this way, and then when you start to learn that, you almost go off to the other cliff of nothing exists. And that's also another tricky area to get into. So Carol said the whole reason we did that sidebar was that somebody with just renunciation, they've given up the world, they realize that the only way to be free of this life is not to hurt others by desire, and hurt others by getting away. That's kind of those main two. The ignorant liking and disliking are the ones that get us in trouble all the time, out of ignorance of thinking that things are irritating on their own side or absolutely beautiful on their own side, and I want it, right? So, when they say seeing emptiness directly, which you'll hear that a lot here, is when you see the emptiness of yourself in all things. You see truly, really, because we're forced from infinite lives of seeing things as self-existent out there on their own. So that karma, that rut, that groove is so deep, right? So to break that, and then suddenly you're walking around in the world knowing that even though it appears to be coming at me, it's actually coming from me, changes your world. The question is, can you do that without the wish for enlightenment for all beings?
You can observe it.
So Tarnjit is yes, you're a yes, Carol's yes. It's
I'm not sure.
Not sure. So yes, you can. You can see emptiness directly and not have the wish for enlightenment in your heart. For all beings. For all beings is the key word there. So what that means, though, is that if you see emptiness directly and you weren't thinking about other beings, other people, you're kind of starting, they say, at the lower rung. If you reach nirvana, which means you've gotten rid of all of your mental afflictions, but that doesn't mean that you're totally enlightened yet. So you need the wish for enlightenment for all beings to help you get to the full Buddhahood. So that's when they're saying that renunciation can never bring the total bliss of matchless Buddhahood. And we'll talk a bit more about that. So, yes.
So today you see a person that it actually created some anger in me. I recognize that I take the time and I don't react towards the person as it's my creation. I'm saying I created this, I have done it, I haven't seen it, but here it is. Where does bodhicitta ignites that engine in those moments?
Let's do a meditation. I got the one. Yeah. Let's go, because I want you to get that feeling of what this is before I talk about it. So, and it may or may not answer this, but we'll go into it later if I don't. So just closing your eyes, getting yourself into this. I want you to see yourself as somebody who understands where things come from. You do not have any more mental afflictions. You're unable. You don't even have the karma to get angry anymore. It's drained out of you. It's gone. You don't even have the ability to get angry anymore. Pride, gone. See, what would you be? Who is that person? And get that sense that you're walking around completely patient, kind, giving. The pride, gone. That ignorant craving, of trying to hurt others to get what you want, gone. And you're just, walking around and see yourself by a river, and it becomes like nightfall. And see in this river, it starts to rush very fast. The current is fast. It's like roaring, like galloping horses. And you see far out something in the water. And you realize it's a raft that's in a cage. That's got a cage around it. And then you start to hear screaming, a voice that's in there, and they're trapped inside of this cage that's rushing down this mad, raging river. And then you're looking closely as the raft cage is getting closer, and you see your mother is inside there. Your mother is inside this cage, and she's screaming and wanting to get out. And you can't get to her. And you're running alongside the river, and you're seeing that it's going to go down a long waterfall. And feel that sensation of you have all of this, and you have no mental afflictions, but you're unable to help your mother. And feel what happens inside of you where you really want that desire to help. That I wish I could help this person be free of suffering. I wish that they, would be happy. That wish right there, that is bodhicitta. And then you expand it out. It's easier to start with somebody that you love. And then what if it was somebody else? And then you would have that same wish as if it was your mother. and feeling that feeling. And then just gently coming back in the room, feeling your grounding wherever your body is touching the earth. And then gently opening your eyes. For those that this was a very common meditation to talk about why bodhicitta is so important, because just helping yourself, you're not able to help everybody else. Anybody want to have talk comments or what that was like for them? And it's visceral. It's a very visceral feeling and that sensation. And that's what they talk about when you have that renunciation. When you have that bodhicitta, you understand that we're constantly creating the karma. It's either the two things that get us in trouble all the time. I want somebody, something, I desire, I crave it, I'm going to hurt to get it. I don't like this, I'm going to hurt to keep it away. Those two things over and over and over cause us problems. So the more and more that you can realize that it's the only reason I'm experiencing this desirous object is because of some good thing that I've had in the past. And the reason that I can't have it is because maybe I haven't given away enough desirous things. Or the reason I have aversion is because I've been angry, I've been impatient at others in the past. So you start to think about that, and then you'll stop trying to hurt others to get what you want and hurt others to keep them away. These two kind of things that we do all the time. And then starting to have that wish for others. So you can, what did that feel like when you were like walking around without many mental afflictions? Well, how freeing was that? Did you get that feeling of like not having any anger, you know, nothing? And what do you do with it? What's the point? Everybody else around you is suffering. You know, everybody else is like, and you're like, they're doing this thing and it's going to cause them more pain. And, I think it's just an automatic that you would get to that place. So they're saying you can still see your lack of self-nature without having bodhicitta, but you can be a very strong person that's thinking of others all the time. How can I help them? They say like a bodhisattva is the servant of the world. And think about people that you know who are like bodhisattvas, even just in your life. And we can talk about these amazing people that we have around us. I mean, the Dalai Lama, Yogananda, you've got Mother Teresa, Martin Luther King, Gandhi, Jesus, Mohammed. I don't know much about Mohammed, but, these... how many people do you have in your world that have they've decided, they've made the decision, I am going to be a bodhisattva. I'm going to to serve the world in a certain way. But what about in your world? In your world? What about in your daily life? Unless you're seeing Jesus and the Dalai Lama around. If you get on his Twitter, he'll send you messages, and it's really neat to get a message from the Dalai Lama during the day. The Dalai Lama just texted me. So you can do it. Just go on his Twitter account.
Seriously.
Oh yeah, I have messages from him.
I get on it.
Yeah, it's so cool. And to randomly say, "Oh, the Dalai Lama just texted me." It's really cool.
Yeah.
So that's using technology in a way that's to is technology a negative thing, or is it something to reach here or to create there? So think about those people, and then even people in your world that are teachers in school, or even waitresses, waiters, people that are all of the people that are picking up our garbage, firemen, or firewomen, that are out there, that are serving and helping. So I'll jump back to that part in a second. So with renunciation, you can reach nirvana, and you can have extraordinary, they say, cities. You can actually start to have extraordinary qualities. They say you can perform miracles, all of these types of things. But it's not the same as if you are somebody that has that wish in your heart to help all beings. So what is bodhicitta? Because I've been talking a lot about it. So I'll give some technical stuff for the homework. So bodhicitta, what is bodhi means enlightenment, and citta means mind. But it's not like a Buddha mind. It really, bodhicitta means together, means the wish to become enlightened for every living being. So somebody who has that wish in their heart but hasn't seen emptiness directly, once they do, they're far more ahead and closer to total enlightenment than somebody that just, was getting rid of their own mental afflictions for their own account, which isn't a negative, it's a very, very, they see that type of a person is like a mountain of gold. That type of a quality of a person that's, on that goal, it's not like just a minor goal, it's a lofty goal. But it's taking it to that next level when you then start to say, okay, I'm going to think about others. I am going to become enlightened so that I can help every single living being. So you become a bodhisattva when you have that thought truly in your heart, in your mind. So in Buddhism, they say that the mind is in the heart. That they don't, or I don't even know if maybe that's where they would center it, but the mind could be, what did you do today? What were you doing at 10 o'clock today? Your mind just went there. That's showing your mind is just not in this, it's beyond this space. So if you've got that piece where suddenly you are in that meditation or in that river and you see that cage going down, and then there's that desire to help that person, it's easier to start with somebody that you love. And Master Shantideva, who does this whole incredible teaching on bodhicitta, says start with carrots and potatoes. Start easy with the people that you love, because even that's going to get a little hard and challenging at times, and then go with the people that are neutral. It's maybe the person that's at the deli or the counter, that you don't really have any aversion to. And then you start working with the ones that could be the enemies. And then even wishing for them, those that have hurt you, wishing them to be totally enlightened, to help them. Then you're really starting to, cook. That's like the rocket fuel that you're really working with. But you got to start easy first. So I've talked about that. That's good. Okay. So I was pulling out some quotes. I just was thinking about people that, who look like, Jesus. I mean, who is Jesus? Was he a bodhisattva? Was he thinking of others? Definitely, I would say. And even just some of his quotes. this one I'm going to say, if you bring forth what is within you, what you bring forth will save you. If you do not bring forth what is within you, what you do not bring forth will destroy you. And I thought that was such a brilliant way of talking about, when we talk about karma, how do you get money? How am I going to get my rent paid? It seems like it's by going to work, but you sometimes go to work and don't get any money. Or sometimes you don't work at all and you get money, right? But so if I'm like hoarding my love, or I'm, not being stingy and not wanting to help others, all of those things, it will destroy you. It's like what he was saying. But if you're giving, you're just going to have so much more. I mean, the Dalai Lama, everything I'm talking about just feels like it's from him. But I think about it when I was thinking about this, like when I first started kind of, I think I was heading on the first path, trying to really deal with myself, my mental afflictions, for years, just trying to deal with my anger, my competitiveness, my pride, my needing to be the best. All of those things were like so strong in me that I was doing like tons of healing work and all this stuff to try and deal with my anger. And then it was like these little kind of glimpses of the Dalai Lama would come in and be like, that's the next step. It's the next part of your evolution. It would just be like these little words that I would hear. And then I started like, who is this Dalai Lama guy? And then you would watch, and he is somebody that practices what he preaches, what you would say. Not that I would say he would be, he is somebody that says, I don't want, I would like my country back, but I do not want to see a war. I do not want anybody dying in the process, And watching all the things that he's done in his life, like you see all of his kind of statements that he's going on, is fixing the karma of why that would happen in the first place. He talks a lot about equality within religions, and if he talks a lot about equality with females, bringing females up. And in the Tibetan culture, it was, sorry, you're a female. You can't get enlightened in this lifetime. You have to wait, do good things, come back as a male, and then you'll get enlightened. Very that patriarchal, and you can see him doing lots to shift that cultural type of a thing. So disparaging other religions, all of these different things. What could be the cause of having your country invaded? And to see somebody like him was like, here's somebody that I would love to follow. Here's somebody who is acting accordingly and not, saying one thing and actually doing that one thing, not saying peace, 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 and then going to war, right? So, and that's his whole thing. My religion is kindness. That's his thing. And Martin Luther King, which I thought would be, here's somebody, nonviolence, and his darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. Because if karma is true, if the same seed creates the same seed, if you're doing hate to try and deal with a situation, if I hate them, that's going to solve it. If I go to war, it's going to solve it. That's just creating more war. So that sort of thing. What was another one of his? Love is the only force capable of transforming an enemy into a friend. Mahatma Gandhi was, my life is my message. Another one who walked his talk. Is that the right way to say it? Walked his talk. Talked his walk. And then, because Paramahansa Yogananda, that Awake movie, if it still is not, keeps coming back at the Vancouver International Film Festival Theatre. It's been out since November and they keep bringing it back. But his whole thing is the happiness of one's own heart alone cannot satisfy the soul. one must try to include as necessary to one's own happiness, the happiness of others. So here are these people that have made this kind of a decision. So, what does that mean for you, for us? Can we make that kind of a decision? And why is that important? Is it just such a good thing to do? And this is where I wanted to bring us back to karma again. So let's go back to thinking about, say, you've generated this wish in your heart. All right, I'm going to take bodhisattva vows, or you're just coming here and hearing this. I've been thinking about this. This is what I want to do. I would like to, commit to being the servant of the world. I would commit to being a person that's going to become totally enlightened to help all beings. So think about that kind of an intention. What kind of intention would that create in every single action that you do? Versus, there's the last cookie, we've got cake later. And maybe that one, we don't have enough cake to go around, or something, or you're eating the last piece of cake that somebody else wants, where you're thinking of others in that way, or I better what's stomp on. I can talk a lot about it. Let's go back to my life and think about how I was. Stomp on others to get ahead. Be angry. All of those things, that pridefulness, all of that stuff, right? Where you're willing to hurt others to get what you want, and willing to hurt others to keep them away. All of those things are not the actions of a bodhisattva. And we've got tons of different meditations that we can do. I've taught a few times the Daksham Namje, which is like exchanging self and others, where you talk about how to combat that part of ourself that is holding on tight to the me, that wants, that thinks that the only way to be happy is to hurt others to get what I want. The only way to be happy is to keep them away by hurting them. That part of that, to really work with that ego part of the self is tons of really good meditations on that, which I'm hoping in the next week and this week we'll do a little bit of them. So if you think, what they're saying, if you just have developing the wish, if you have this wish, then all your good deeds become a cause for omniscience. And does anybody know what can describe to me what is omniscience? What does that mean? In a brief one.
All-knowing.
All-knowing. But is it like all-knowing what is in the bottom of the ocean and that little, specific type of shell that is at the bottom? I'll know it. Is
just maybe all understanding?
All understanding. And it's like, it's knowing exactly what to take up and what to give up. It's like, omniscience, you'll know. You'll be able, they say you can read minds. So I'll know exactly what Marge needs. And I think, has anybody seen the Awake movie?
No.
By Yoga? It's just, yeah. So, he talks about his teacher, his guru. He says pulling out, he described it like a metaphor of rooting out, all of his bad teeth and pulling them out from, just being able to go in there and see exactly what it is that a person needs. That, okay, there's that little bit of pride that Christine's hanging on to, that we just need to kind of deal with. So if you're thinking about helping all beings, every single thing that you're doing is starting to create that omniscience, that very simple, what to give up and what to take up. Do I give up harming others? Do I take up helping others? Very easy, broad way of saying it, but you can narrow it down to many things in your life. They say that you become a person worthy of the honor of all beings. They say you deserve the world. And I think about Jesus' quote again, the first will become last, the last will become first. And it's just the karma. If you're always, go ahead, but you're not accounting for yourself too. You are also part of all those beings. It doesn't mean that you become like a martyr and give up taking care of yourself and putting everybody else forward and you're like exhausted, dead on the ground and can't take care of yourself. That's not, you're including yourself in there. It's like you're widening the circle to include all beings, not just you and maybe some close friends over here, and maybe your car, or maybe your child. You've got these certain things that are within your circle, right? But then you're expanding that circle further and further out. So we talked a bit about this here. You outshine the practitioners of those that are just doing it to deal with their own mental afflictions. And the tiniest good deed you ever do, such as feeding a scrap of food to a bird, becomes a spiritual practice of the greater way. So if you're thinking in your mind, I'm going to help all beings, and then you see somebody that's on the street and you hand them a loonie, food, socks, shoes, whatever it is, all of those actions that you're doing, because you're I don't know if I want to go into the wisdom, the emptiness part as much, but so if I see Sharon here and he's suffering, I'm not going to go there yet. Let's think. So if Sharon is making me angry for some reason, okay, and I don't understand that it's because I have been irritated. I've made other people angry. I've caused that. If I've done that and I don't understand this, and then I don't try to help Sharon, I don't try to like either just run away so I don't get angry. I'd be like a bump on a log, and I just shut my mouth and freeze so I don't say something back to create the negative karma. Or I don't think, okay, the reason that I'm seeing Sharon I feel like he is making me upset is because I've made other people upset in the past. I've been irritated. I'm just going to stop being irritating. I'm going to stop being angry. And then try and think, how can I help him stop creating the karma? He's, I'm forced to see him being, I don't know, doing something that's irritating. I can't imagine what it is, but we're going to keep going with this. So then I may say, how can I stop him from doing that? And maybe it's just like breaking a glass. Maybe he's yelling at me, okay? And I was just going to be ready to yell right back at him, So maybe I drop a glass and run to the washroom or do something to stop the situation. That's taking it that step further from not being the bump on the log or practicing patience. It's like, how can I help Sharon, because he's now forced to be angry at me and yelling at me because I've been angry at somebody else in the past. The only reason that I can experience Sharon being angry at me and yelling at me and me wanting to yell back is that I've done that in the past. So if I stop doing it, then I'll slowly, all of those people that anger me in the world will disappear. Imagine that. Yes.
Can I ask the other part to that?
Yes.
So the other part to that is, so Sharon's making you angry to ripen your karma, but then what's going on for him?
Well, this is the couple of things. I don't know who Sharon is,
Exactly.
right? I mean, Sharon could be, he could be one of those omniscient people that's going, Christine has some anger that's still kind of hidden down here that she's not recognizing. I am going to call it up and show it to her so that she can deal with it and get rid of it. It's almost like I could thank him for coming and doing that. He could be the person that and says, because he knows he's like he's omniscient. He has omniscience, so he's able to go in and say exactly the things that are going to piss me off, and then I'm going to rise to the occasion or not, or I'm going to struggle. I'm going to try to be patient, or I may lose it, I may not, or whatever. That's one way of thinking about it, right? And that's still a good way to think about it. I can be thanking Sharon, thank you later on. I may not say it to his face, because then if he's not that bodhisattva person, he might be like, you're crazy. You don't know what you're talking about. I don't know. And so, but thanking him for bringing that up and showing me where I still am not done yet. I still have anger in me. Or you could be thinking, he's not a bodhisattva, and he's creating now karma for himself to have somebody else angry at him in the future. And how then I must not get angry, to stop that, or to try and prevent him. You want to maybe prevent him from, getting angry to create more of that karma.
It's true. Yeah, I get that. And another piece of that is, what if he's just going about his merry business? He has no intention of angering you.
But he pissed me off anyway.
Something about him is you're getting pissed off.
Absolutely.
But he has no karma around that.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah. So then for him, he may not even understand, why am I sneering at him? Why am I responding in a certain way? Why is all of that happening? That's still my piece. They may, it may not even be that they are even that they know that. I don't know. I don't have omniscience to know what he's thinking or feeling, but it's how I respond and react to that. So, do you know in that situation that he's not upset with, that he's not reacting?
I don't know, but I've been in situations where I really wasn't trying to irritate someone, but they saw me as being irritating. Perfect, right?
Yeah. So, that's the whole same thing here in this class. I'm teaching this class with, what my intention is to teach this in a certain way, or whatever it is that I'm wanting to get across. Yeah. And for somebody else, it may just be really irritating. Yeah. I may not be following the book by, or I'm jumping from here to there, or, maybe Sharon's upset that I'm like pinpointing, right? So, but where that's I have no control over that. Yeah. So what's important for me is to know, what if I was deeply concerned with how everybody thought of me, and then I maybe, and I could talk about myself in the past, become like a rigid person where I didn't have flow, and then maybe be afraid if I'm always trying to suss out what's the right thing to say, how am I going to make sure that Stephen really likes me, likes what I'm saying, and he goes away and says, wow, that's awesome, right? Like how, if that's my concern, or that's how I think it's going to work, then I may be presenting completely different. But if I'm sitting here thinking, I'm just going to, teach this class, give this information, understand that all of you here have this incredible virtue to actually be sitting in the room to hear how to get enlightened in one lifetime, possibly. Jumped. But how to reach total enlightenment through bodhisattva, or how to, why is the wish for enlightenment so important? That may just be my own, wish, and thinking that you guys are all so awesome, and like bowing down to each of your incredible virtue that you did to be here, to hear this. That could be me. But you could have a totally different experience from this. I can't, how much longer before, that I need to go. I have no control over that. So if somebody is irritated with me, and maybe they stomp out, that's their experience. However, can be tricky, because you don't want to say, oh, that's their karma. That's their karma. That's how they experience it. I'm going to be this way, and too bad for all of you. But that's where the bodhicitta comes in, right? Am I kind of answering it? slightly. I see Carol's hand.
Yeah, I just, Georgina, you're making me think about this, and what comes to what I'm thinking is I sort of, okay, here's a person, and you said something, I said something, and I'm getting this reaction. Wow, right? That's what we're talking about, right?
Yeah.
And I can think, oh, okay, this is like for like in terms of karma, and it's because I have I've reacted myself to someone. I've interpreted someone else in the past and reacted, let's say, violently, angrily, according to my interpretation. And that person, and I was so sure that was my story, and that person, meanwhile, is like, whoa, just as I am now, like, whoa. And so it's a mirror view of that happening as a term, as a kind of, as karma.
Yeah, and a really good, easy way of giving that description is your intention. You give chocolates to somebody, you bring beautiful flowers, and what if I turned around and like hit you over the head with those flowers and stormed out, right? Your intention there was to give me flowers. My response is totally not congruent, it seems, right? The me getting angry at receiving the flowers is from a previous karma that just so happens to ripen at this moment when you're offering me the flowers. They're not connected at all, and that's the whole thing. Each of your experiences in the room that you're having in relation to the teaching, in relation to the class, is from almost a previous situation that's happened. So the tricky thing is we think it's so obvious. If we didn't have the time gap, I would give Yellen some money, and then immediately it would be instantaneous. There'd be no gap, money. You couldn't move or change. How could you even do anything? It would be this, or you step on an ant, you break your rib. Okay, don't step on ants. You would know immediately. But because the time gap is so different, there is a time gap. You can't kind of equate the two right away.
Is there any way to know what is the time gap?
They say as you're more and more, in doing meditation, the time gap gets less and less and less. So that it's almost like I'm, where it would almost be like that. You have that, and something happens right away. And that's, where I'm thinking some of those miracle things happen, where they think about a flower and a flower appears, or somebody gives them a flower. I mean, so sometimes you could say, this is happening because of this that I did over here. You may be able to associate the two right away. Okay, yeah, I know exactly why this is happening to me, right? I used to teach yoga when we had the old 3 jewels, and there was a dance teacher that I particularly liked in the past, and he wasn't teaching. He had a substitute. I walked into the class and he wasn't teaching, and I left. I left the class. So what do you think happened 2 weeks later? I was teaching a class and somebody came in and saw it was me and left. And I was like, I know exactly where that came from, right? But I could have been very offended. If in the past maybe I would have been very very hurt by that and tried to be more perfect. And so does that help answer that?
Yeah.
Kind of, but they do say I've heard from people that were going into the 3-year retreats and doing the meditations that they say the time gap gets shorter and shorter and shorter. As you become, they say that somebody that's totally a Buddha is beyond time and space. So I think about that often. So if a Buddha is beyond time and space, and they say all of us, everybody's on that, everybody's going to get there sooner or later, whether it's this lifetime, 10 lifetimes, 100 lifetimes. And then I think, okay, there's like Buddha somewhere, you could say hi to them. There's future somewhere, I can't say me because it won't be me, but that's already enlightened. That's beyond time and space and knows me right now, can see me sitting here with all of my things that I need to work on. So I just think about that. That's not part of the teaching, but I sometimes just think about if they're beyond time and space, they know me when I was a slug to sitting here to somewhere else. And I'm not saying Christine me, but they say like a mind stream of that, of those karmas that have been running through. So, Caroline, did I answer the question?
Yes, I think so. I mean, for example, there's this person that I didn't like immediately, but I had to deal with her, right? And I really tried my best to feel something good, about all this, but eventually, it didn't work. We've been arguing a lot, and she yelled at me, and it's getting worse and worse and worse and worse, and now we don't talk to each other. So my question is, maybe that's because I didn't like her in the first place, and I created that, karma, so we couldn't even, make it work with each other. Is this my fault, or does it happen so fast? What is this time cap?
It could, you can have people that are friends that become enemies, and then enemies that later on become friends, right? And for whatever ripening of the karma that happens at this moment for the both of you, right? Or just you, that you had a dislike of the person right away, and say the person, in your mind, you think the person disliked you right away too?
Oh, yes.
Okay. So we can start with there.
No matter what I do, it's irritating to her, that's mutual.
Yeah. So this is the perfect thing about if you, okay, I'm going to be a bodhisattva. I'm going to, and you can pick a person that you're going to work on, and that's, they say sometimes start with, the carrots and potatoes, start with somebody that's easy. And then maybe as you build up, that's the one. Or if you're like hardcore, you're going to go right away with her.
It doesn't seem possible.
Yeah. But it's amazing. It's amazing to watch where, if you're thinking, okay, the only reason that I could dislike this person is I've disliked others in the past. The only reason that she or he irritates me is I've been irritating in the past. I created this. I created this situation somehow. And then I'm going to really do my hardest to not yell back or to not engage or to be patient. And I'm not saying it's easy. Just sitting there and, you just watch when that anger and all that wells up and it comes. It can take control and away you go, right? And then you can go back and think about it later. And then slowly you're working on it where then you may start to have compassion for that person. And
if you feel it inside, it's going to have some impact on your life, on your relationships with this person?
Totally could. There's two things, there's things that could happen. Not two things, many things. The person shifts or suddenly they're gone in your life.
Oh, she'll be gone.
but if you're not,
I don't want to create this for the future.
Exactly.
I don't want to deal with all this stuff over again.
Exactly. So the thing is, by you biting the tongue, being the bump on the log, not engaging in it, understanding, and then even if you do, it's okay. You just get back up and start again. It's like I sometimes felt like I was in a boxing ring. And then I would be out in in the corner, for getting all mopped up to go back into the ring again to try and not engage, and then, maybe I'd fail, get a punches in here or there and come back again and then try, so you're doing with all of that struggle, it's beautiful because your intention in your mind is to try and stop a habit that's already there. So it could be what you're doing is you're stopping future people like this showing up. Because the perfect example is, I'm going to leave my job, leave the relationship, move to a different country, move to a different city, go there to get away from these people, right? That's what I'm, and then you go there and there they all are in a different shape.
We come out to Canada.
Yeah, exactly. I'm going to come to Canada.
Could it be possible? So I know the question was about the time gap.
Yeah.
And I guess it seems like when we say time gap, it almost seems like we're talking about an illusion of time in general. And I mean, I know we've talked about this in other classes, but the concept of dependent origination, of like everything arises together and is interrelated. To me, it seems like something, like the butterfly effect, like, a butterfly flaps its wings on one side of the world and a tornado happens on the other side, and they could be interconnected. And the tornado could happen like maybe a month later and they could be interconnected. So it seems to me that if you've got all these physical phenomena that are co-arising at the same, co-arising in dependence with each other, but in a different, we see a before and an after because of change that's occurring. Because we see it change, it creates the illusion of the time gap.
Yeah.
And so really it's change and not so much different spaces in time. I don't know if I'm saying.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Let me see if it's like. If Caroline's working with the person and you've been, say, dealing with this for a while, or not, or all of a sudden they're nice to you, right? Maybe you do something and they're nice. You could think that the time gap was instantaneous because I did something nice, the response was nice. You could think that. And not to say that it's not possible, but likely it was because of a previous kindness that happened that just happened to arise at that time.
Right.
Yeah, but yeah.
And I guess that's kind of what I'm getting at, because it's almost like we see things as cause and effect, as you hit a ball with the bat, and that's the reason why the ball flew in that direction. Yeah. But really, it almost seems like everything's appearing in the position that it is in our experience. And there's the illusion of the ball hitting the bat, but really the ball and the bat appeared in that position at the exact same time, and they could have been two, like the real causes for those that are not what it seems to be. And so
right, because if it could be a different one, you didn't hit the ball.
Right.
It was a strike.
Right.
Or something.
Right.
So and you're right on. And the tricky piece, again, that cliff that you can fall off, the nihilism, nothing exists. It does, even though it's like, okay, it's not connected in this moment. I'm just gonna, I'm being nice so I don't have to deal with this type of a person again. I want to try and stop having these irritating people that I don't like showing up in my world, right? But they still function and exist. Like, you could still go and jump in front of a car and get hit by it, and you're like, hey, wait a minute, that's not, the connection. It still functions and exists as a car that will hit you. So but you're right. I just wanted to add that in, because we always will our minds have the tendency to think self-existent, out there, person irritating me, or nothing exists, and I don't, and then you go into a different place. because we're trying to keep getting ourselves into that middle way place that functions, it exists, it functions, right? I just wanted to put that up, but you're right. Yes.
At the end of the day, what I did with the person was to thank her. After my mind shifted the position, I created this, I shouldn't get angry. She's showing me another point of view, not to see who's wrong or who's right, just openly knowing that the time gap is basically like a wave. They throw a rock or a wave starts deep in the ocean, and when it arises to our lives, arrives as like a full wave that takes us with just a raw feeling that really this is getting me angry, this is touching me, I have to react. Just thanking for the situation. It sort of gives a peace of mind, not engaging more, and not with the person and with our own selves. Because if I go later on to bed thinking this person got me angry today, in that moment I started shifting, alright, what is the message here, what is the person showing, a different point of view, and then thinking, yeah, it's a different point of view. So, and thank you for bringing it up. Because if I get personal, you're the boss, so I cannot get personal.
I mean, I've talked about it in the past, like when I first started dealing with this, my mantra over and over in my head was, I created this, I created this, I created this, just so I would not speak. So I would not do something, because they're doing ridiculous things. They're saying ridiculous things to me that I have every right to yell back and say, you are absolutely wrong, and I can say this, and this, and this as to why you're wrong. By me saying that over and over and over helped stop, and then started to create space where I could just send them love, sitting there while they're very angry with me, But it's the more and more that you work with it, you're breaking the ruts of that.
But by not getting angry in that situation, aren't you just kicking the can down the road? So if karma, suppose, Sharon making you angry is because you made somebody else angry for, say, 5 minutes previously, now it's, your turn under karma to be angry. If you don't get angry, aren't you just kicking it down the road? Because if you causing anger has to cause you anger, and you don't let it happen.
Good. So, when a karma ripens, it's gone. It's not like the previous anger that I had before that's now ripening here. When that person's done getting angry at me or whatever incident that happens, it's gone forever. Only so then it's like you're draining out of you all of your past actions. Now we can talk about at another time, or if we have time, ways to purify. They talk about bringing in, okay, I understand why this is here. There's purification that you can do of those karmas, and when they talk about thinking about I'm going to become enlightened in order to help all these other beings, carries a huge motivation and power behind it. And it's the same thing like when Alvaro is speaking in a different language, and if he's swearing, I can pick up that word a lot faster than other words because of the power and the emotion behind it. So it's the same thing as when you've got this bodhicitta, I want to be a bodhisattva. The power of that steers ahead of all these other negative karmas. That helps you move forward faster and faster. Those other karmas are still there. Then you can start to work on the negative actions and things that you've done in the past. You can do things to purify them, and then they may come up as a cut hand. Maybe I'm going to get stitches when I maybe would have been hit by a car and killed. You know, could the result of it will be a lot smaller. So by you not getting angry in that moment, you're stopping it. You didn't do it, so the consequence can never arise. Does that make sense?
Sort of. I mean,
Sort
it
of.
seems to clash like with the principle. I mean, I guess the principles are deeper than just the little phrases.
Yeah, it's
or
deeply.
principles.
I mean, the one thing they said about karma is it's very deeply hidden. Like we don't know why. What is my karma that I'm seeing this color of the floor? And you know, all like every single piece that we're seeing in this room right now is a result of what we've done in the past. You know, and it can shift. It's not permanent. You know, we're living in Vancouver, you know, and we're not, you know, like Lama Marut would say, you could be at a cafe drinking coffee and then all of a sudden their bomb goes off. It's a shift of your karma. So
I was just going to say, in addition to what Steve's saying, so I don't think there's anything wrong with getting angry. It's like, okay, if someone says something to me, I'm getting angry inside. I realize, okay, I'm getting angry, but I'm not going to say anything. I'm not going to do anything. I'm just going to feel that anger and know that that anger is coming from a past deed. So then it's gone. That's what she's saying. It's gone. I haven't created more anger in the future by saying something else or leaving or
And you've owned it, right?
retaliating.
yeah, and even I've had it in when I was, you know, really first starting working with this, where the person, my boss, was I was getting angry, and I could hear all of it in my head. You know, you created this, all of that. I could feel the anger welling, and then inside me saying, "I don't care," and yelling right back at that time in that moment. Just it took. I had the karma ripened, and out came my words. You know, I didn't care, even though, but I still was creating a gap in there to have it. So then later on, I sat back, I thought, and then I called them and apologized and all of that stuff. But which I would never have done in the past. Apologize, you know, I was right. You know, so those, you know, so then I would for sure get something like that, or I could work on shifting it and purifying it. So the appearances of having an angry person show up in your world is less and less and less and less. So then they become like a treasure trove. It's like, you know,
Thank you.
yeah, totally. Because then, like somebody's like Sharon comes along, and I was saying I don't know who he is, and he sees maybe in me, or it just needs to ripen some kind of karma, and he'll instigate it and just show you're not quite done yet. You're still getting irritated here, right? And they are like treasures. But right now, if you're surrounded by them, you're surrounded by treasures, and there's just, you know, it's not, you know, you got to kind of clear them away. Did that help? Yeah.
Steve, one more question. So all you need to do to take care of your previous karmas is to acknowledge that I created this and just to let it go? Or
It helps in creating the space in your mind between when the emotion rises and then the words come out. That will help start to create the space. Then they call it the purification, the 4 powers, where you know, and then you can work on purifying the karma of it, you know, and if it's a great, you know, they make it like a ritual and a ceremony. You can do like a fire puja, they call it, you know, maybe in yoga and in Tibetan Buddhism they do that a lot, where you're taking like black sesame seeds and then you're thinking about, okay, I can think about all the negative things that I've done, where I've hurt people, where I've yelled at people, where I've been angry, where I've been selfish, where I've been like this. And then you could say, you have regret for that. I regret doing it. And then you regret it with wisdom. You know, that's going to create more pain and be harder for me to be able to help other people in the future because I've done that. And then you could say, okay, I'm going to do like an antidote for it. You know, I'm going to restrain from doing that and be realistic. You don't want to say I'm going to restrain and not get angry again for the rest of my life, because then you add in lying, possibly, right? If you're not really right there ready. You know, I'll restrain for the next day, or the next 3 minutes, or the next, I'll do that. And I'll apply wisdom. I created this, in there the next time it happens. And then you can like burn them and they come up. And so you can do that sort of piece. And it's very, you can even take a particular one that's your piece. Like my piece was anger. That was the guy that I needed to deal with. And so it was the one that I worked on the most, and then through the years. And you could pick, it could be sexual misconduct. It could be if you're having like all the time, why is everybody cheating on me? Oh, okay, maybe I've done that in the past. This is something I need to deal with. It could be, and it may not be this lifetime. You want to think about what's the patterns that are showing up in your, I never stole, or I never this and that they could be something from the past that you could work on. And then it starts to go away. And even the fact of doing that and applying the wisdom to it just destroys it like they say, like a hot knife in butter.
So can you just do it mentally?
Absolutely, yes. And they say, once Geshe Michael talked about, when he first talks about the 4 powers, that once you get this, you should be like going mad on it. You should be like doing it all the time because, we've got so many bad kind of things that we possibly have done that could cause us suffering. And that's where being the bodhicitta, the power of that, it gets in the runway ahead of all these other little guys and takes off. So all of your wishes of others, it gets in there faster and faster. So these ones kind of stay dormant. They don't have, we didn't talk about this one, the causes and conditions. Like they have the causes